You guys, can you believe it's episode 17 of the Walk With Me podcast? Hey, it's Jay. I hope you are out and about already, if not, getting on your way. I'm on the beach again today outside of my house. It's a warm and beautiful day. Luckily, not lots of wind. That's always my challenge. Recording as I walk with you, I'm afraid there's too much wind coming in, and today is perfect. I've been thinking a lot about what I want to share on this episode. I was actually supposed to record with Kate Northrup today, but she had to cancel and reschedule, so that should be coming up on a future episode. And then I thought, okay, well, what's coming up? What's real and true right now that I feel passionate about talking about? And I started thinking about patterns, mostly because when I'm working with my clients, this is one of the hardest things to walk beside them with and shift. And also, as you guys know through this whole podcast series, I'm really trying to shift my identity. And when we're talking about identity, we're really talking about patterns, because our identity is essentially made up of all of our daily life patterns and beliefs, and the way that we show up, present ourselves, connect with other people. And oftentimes when we're trying to go for a dream, what we really have to do is become resourceful in shifting our patterns. And it's challenging to do. And I started thinking about how frustrating it is that there's no easy answer to this. And how much I used to believe that there was. When I first started thinking about really going after my dreams, my first big dream, which started when I was probably 12 years old, I started doing community theater and realized I loved theater and learned about Broadway in New York City, and really had this dream of one day having that as my career. And as I grew older, graduated high school, got my first 9-to-5 job out of high school, it really became a reality whether I was going to go after that dream or not. And I think I believed at that time in my life, so it was about 21 before I moved to New York City and really pursued as a career, all in, going after being a Broadway performer. I think I truly believed that there were groups of people in the world and like little private circles where people had answers that I didn't have, where people had access to resources that I didn't have. I believed that there were people in the world that didn't have like when you become successful, like when you become a Broadway star, or when you make a lot of money. For me, a lot of money at that time in my life, the idea of making 6 figures, that was a thought in my mind. That was a goal, and I would say it that way. I want to make 6 figures. I thought if you could make $100,000 in your career, you'd be like the wealthy on top of the world. And I definitely had this thought that once I figured out this secret, or once I connected to these people or was introduced to the right resources, I would never have any darkness or struggle. I could completely outgrow and leave behind all the things I didn't like about my family upbringing, all the connection to drugs and institutions and death and addiction and, my city and being around people who smoked cigarettes and didn't eat healthy and struggled to pay the bills and had drama happening constantly with family members. I thought that once you get into these other circles, and even as I started doing spiritual practices at this time in my life, I even thought like when you become a spiritual person, you don't deal with any of these things. You transcend above and beyond, and they're not a part of your life. And to some degree, you do expand. So over the years, I shifted so many patterns and changed my identity and moved to New York and really pursued this challenging career of being a Broadway performer and hit major goals and made it on Broadway stages, only to discover that the career wasn't everything I thought it would be, that there is a light and shadow side to everything. And then when I got into coaching, I think I thought the same thing. Well, certainly in this career, in this industry of people, everybody is in integrity, 100% responsibility, empowered. You can really rise beyond not being affected by these things in your personal life, intrinsically and extrinsically, in your relationships with family and partners, your friends, and of course your financial success and time freedom. And what I've discovered is that there is not anyone who is privileged enough to not have to consistently face both sides of a situation. There is never a point where you're not looking within to continue to heal in order to grow. There is no arrival point. There is no person that has a secret answer that you don't have. Now, what's also true is that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know yet. And you might not know how to access that source of wisdom and embodiment and sovereignty in your life. And so it is true that having mentors and going into trainings and investing in healing with people who are experienced in these fields will help you to get there. And without doing that, I don't know how you do. So, meaning the answers are not always just existing in you and there's no resources outside of you to support you. But ultimately, anytime you work with a mentor, go through a training program in any area of life, healing, personal development, business, there's just an awareness that you reach of what's available to you, strategies that you can try on, and ultimately what people mean when they say the answers exist inside of you is that if you just took those strategies or did what someone else said to do, it would never be complete because it requires you, your wisdom, your knowledge, your embodiment, your experience, your gifts, your talents, your old patterns, your new patterns. You're the only one who can become a master of those things. Because no matter how many times you talk to a coach or work with a business coach or however deep your therapist goes with you, they're never going to know all the things. And you're never going to tell the complete truth. And they'll never have the fully holistic view that you have in your heart, in your mind, in your soul that is a reflection of what your life really is. And so it comes down to you at the end of the day, your self-responsibility, your awareness of your own blocks, and then, of course, the resourcefulness that you bring in, which I've always found through high-level trainings in the things that I'm interested in, sisterhood with other like-minded women where we can mastermind and talk out loud, and mentors who will be with me in the process to meet me right at the door of every really big challenge with an invitation for how to work through it. And so, that's my goal for us in our walks is to be able to turn toward those challenges together and become resourced in them. And I'm so passionate about NLP, neuro-linguistics programming techniques, because while I spend a lot of time doing soul work and connecting with my soul essence and my spirit and energy work, it's a lot of the time the thing that holds me back from being fully embodied in my body and in my daily routine and in the actions and the breakthroughs that would actually help shift my external world. It requires a highly attuned relationship with my mind and breaking patterns. And so this is one of the things I really wanted to bring forward in our walk today, because I can never get anywhere with my clients if we can't break their patterns. And it takes time to work with a client's patterns. It takes time for me to see their pattern, not as much time to see my own. And it takes time to make them aware of all the resistance and integration it requires coming up against and moving through in order to get to the other side. And most people want to rush this process. When they join me in my signature program, Mentor Masterclass, they want to be making 6 figures in their coaching business by the end of the year. And for some women who are ready and willing and capable and resourced in breaking patterns, they'll get there. But for most, it's a time-consuming process. And I do know some techniques when I'm able to work with women one-on-one that help speed this up. It's much harder in a group because you really need to get personal around it. And sometimes it requires accountability because our blind spots are in the dark. And so I wanted to teach you some NLP techniques that I use to shed light on my own patterns, and also when I get to work with clients more intimately and as much as I can in a group setting, when I have spotlight seats, hot seats, every month in Mentor Masterclass, it's an intimate group of women and I get to spotlight coach them, and these are some of the things I'm trying to dig into when I have that time to shed light on their patterns. Because what's true is that we have to develop better strategies. And in order to develop better strategies, we have to know what's working and what's not working. We have to deeply know ourselves. And, there's no one style of coaching that fits all. During my sessions with my clients, I try to pace my clients in order to gain their rapport and trust. In order to get them to be more honest with me, I build a rapport with them. And I find it's actually the same in relationship with ourselves. When you are trying to break a pattern in your own life, you also have to strengthen and build a relationship with yourself. And oftentimes that relationship is out of trust. Something is out of alignment most times when you're beginning to do deep work. And you have to strengthen that self-love, that trust, that ability to this empowered part of you that's showing up consciously as the witness to your patterns and trying to talk to that other part of you that's in the old pattern. They need to have good rapport, just the same as when we are coaches working with clients. We need to have really powerful rapport with them in order to get anything done. For example, if you're someone in your coaching relationship or in relationship with yourself that takes a more holistic view, you may want to see the bigger picture before delving deep into something within yourself and your own healing, or same vice versa with a client. But this approach can be frustrating to a client who wants to get into detail straight away. And this approach can be frustrating for the inner part of you that just wants to get to the details and straight into action and doing something right now. And you might find it useful to have some concepts for yourself, and especially if you're a coach working with clients, so that you can experiment with different patterns and different ways of working with yourself or your clients to get results. And I want to shed light on 3 patterns that I try to stay attuned to within myself and I'm aware of about myself before I go trying to shift something in order to get better results or go after something big in my life, or I'm going through a clear transition. So I hope that by shedding light on these 3 patterns today, you'll also be able to tune into creating a better strategy. And so this is going to be, I think, a 2-part podcast series. We're going to work on shedding light on patterns and breaking unhelpful patterns. And then in next week's podcast, we're going to focus on developing better strategies. And these 2 things go hand in hand together. So the first thing to note is, are you an options or procedures kind of woman? Are you, or man, I think we have some men that listen to the podcast too, so I'll include you guys. First pattern, options or procedures. So people running, here's how you can tell, and I want you to see if you can identify this pattern about yourself now. People running on options patterns love looking into and the adventure of choices. And they love to talk about all the options and discuss it with other people and look into many different things. This is like an options patterned person. And then a procedures patterned person is really good at doing things in a logical sequence, more like beginning to end, more linear thinking. And so here's some kind of ways to identify which one you are. So you would hear the options pattern person saying things like, okay, well, what are my options? Tell me what things are available in this situation. What are the choices? They're very much want to fix what's broken. They want to find out what's broken and fix it. They find it hard to stick with a clear, long plan. And you'll hear them say that. My instincts are to focus on different things and do different projects all at once. And they'll say things, I like to keep changing and I like to keep my options open. So the patterns procedure person is like, okay, let's go through the requirements. Let's look at what's needed, what needs to happen, and in what order. And they would be like, I need to go to the directions first and read through them. They want to know what are the rules. And they also look at it like, okay, first we're going to do this, second we're going to do this, third we're going to do this. So let me tell you a story about this. I quickly learned when studying this in NLP that my husband is 100% options and I am 100% procedures. And if you remember our episode about the human needs, it's also a little bit like my husband thrives on the need for variety and I am a little bit more certainty driven when it comes to business or things. And so we have a really hard time doing projects together because this is what things in our house look like. If it's like spring cleaning, Brent has a million things happening at once. There's a pile of leaves that's been half raked outside. There is some mulch in the front yard. There is some like caulking supplies for the window treatment, like left out and halfway done. And there's like the hammers on the counter and the picture frames waiting there to be hung, but it's not hung yet. And he goes between all these different projects at once. So he'll spend like 20 minutes doing the leaves, then he'll come in and hammer a little bit, do some caulking, let it dry. While it's drying, he'll go out and, mulch the garden. And so I'm the opposite. I like to view the whole plan ahead of time, all the things that need to get done, what needs to get done by when, and then do them one at a time. So I would plan like, okay, today's outside day, I'm going to do the leaves and the raking. Today's inside day, I'm going to do the window and the caulking, and I'll do them one at a time and finish them one at a time. So when the leaves are done, I celebrate, go to the next thing. And learning this was really helpful because I learned why we struggled to shift our pattern of not being able to do things seemingly very well together. And now we kind of know each other after sharing this NLP technique with him, and we can go into things better. So this is great to know if you're running a team. It's definitely great in any partnership. And for the sake of our walk today, I want you to look at it within yourself, because it's also some things are going to require you, if you're an options kind of person, to embrace procedures and vice versa. So you can really recognize highly options-oriented people because they frequently go off on tangents and change tactics. And they're likely to design processes and not stick to them. And they may cancel sessions unexpectedly. You may set up systems for yourself and then cancel following through or change the way you want to do it or not complete something. And the challenge is to pin these kind of people down while allowing choice. So one way to do this is to invite you or your clients to make commitments more publicly and to choose who else to share their goals with apart from you. Someone who reminds them of what they say they want to do and sticking to it. I'm going through this with my husband right now. Part of our plan for after pregnancy for me to pull back in my business is for him to ask for a raise, and he keeps coming up with these plans and saying he's going to do it, and then he changes how he wants to do it, and there's a new reason why he wants to be in person with his boss, or a new number he wants to ask for, or something he needs to wait for. And so now that I know this, I'm great at holding him accountable to it and asking him to. In fact, I'll make sure to do that today. And individuals who are high on procedures, like me, are likely to want to tell you stories from start to finish and tend to feel reassured if they understand the process. And the challenge is to expand their comfort with the unknown and the loss of control. And one challenge can be to stop, you could try is like stop wearing a watch for a day and let go of being fully prepared for a meeting or having people to your house and just go with the flow and see what happens. So now that you know this about me, you also know why this identity change is challenging for me, of going into a more unknown plan after having the baby, not really living my life by controlling everything so much and opening up to see what wants to come in. So this is a pattern I have to break, and something now that I know about myself, I can work with it. Okay, so which one are you? Options-based or procedures-based? And how can you begin to work with this pattern in yourself and see if it might be affecting you in a change or goal that you're going after in your own life? So we'll get to those in a second, and we'll get to really shifting the pattern, deciding what that is, but let's first get aware. Second, are you a moving toward or away from kind of gal or guy? So according to Freud, your identity, which represents your natural desires, your natural instincts, moves you towards pleasure or away from pain. So think of this as like the classic carrot or stick motivation pattern. People with a toward tendency look ahead to a goal that's calling them and drawing them forward, while those with an away from tendency look back to what they want to get away from because they fear the pain of it. And the emphasis when using NLP coaching is on outcomes. And sometimes people are actually highly motivated to change by what they don't want instead of by what they want. So you want to recognize this for yourself. It's very important to know this about yourself. So this is what you'll hear if you're a moving toward pleasure kind of person. You'll hear things like, or say things like, let's go for it. Let's keep our eye on the prize. Let's create a vision and move toward it. Pleasure and fun is like the topic of conversation, and trying to lean into that. Really looking at the desired vision and hitting that goal and creating it. It's about achievement and attaining more than anything else. Now, if you are an away from pain kind of person, then you'll hear things more like, let's get out of here. We have to stop this. Let's get rid of this. I'm so tired of this. It'll talk about pain and challenges and frustrations and really digging into what's not working and really focusing on what you don't want to happen. So in order to really hear if someone runs towards pleasure or away from pain, you want to have a conversation with yourself, or if you're trying to do this with your client, what's important to them? What's important to them about the change they're trying to make? And really drill down with like 3 levels of questioning, because at first you're going to notice that you might respond to something a little bit more positive, and the deeper and like hide away from patterns. But if you keep digging, you'll get toward what your preference really is. For example, if I'm working with a client and I'm asking them, what's important to you about building your coaching business and your brand? And they say, I just want the extra income. I like the extra income. And I say, so what's important to you about this extra income? That's like level 2 questioning. And I say, I won't have to worry about paying my credit card bills anymore and my debt. And that's so painful each month, feeling stuck in that. And I say, okay, and what's important to you about paying your credit card bill and getting out of debt? And they say, it means I don't have to ask my husband for extra cash for the things that I want, and I could have freedom in my life to do what I want and explore what I want and have what I want and be what I want without being constrained by someone else. So if you have an away from tendency, you can sometimes come across as negative or critical because you know what you don't want, as compared to people with a toward motivation who are more motivated by what they do want. So don't be put off by this. Don't be put off by your own complaints, and don't be put off by someone who's in the more away from plain side, because we really need people who can pay attention to what can go wrong and have a critical eye, particularly when it comes to health and safety for our lives and lines of work that require like customer service. And a lot of the things in coaching require you to be able to be aware of these things. So it's a powerful pattern, but also one to be aware of, to help use, because if you're stuck in the shadow side, you can remain stuck and stay in that pattern for long term. And so you may need to work to balance out the critical voice associated with away from tendencies with the ability to dream, so that you don't turn into a miserable character like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, who's always looking on the dark side of life, because that can feel unmotivating and unattractive. But knowing this about yourself, you can honor how it motivates you, but let it actually motivate you. And by contrast, people with strong moving toward pleasure tendencies are always looking to the future and what can be better. And sometimes they get overwhelmed because they take on more and more without becoming aware of their success and really giving themselves times to celebrate and enjoy the journey. And they also overlook risks and make snap decisions that they regret later. So I bet you can guess which one is me if you've been listening to the podcast. I have always been a moving toward kind of woman. And I'm actually starting to let myself try on a different pattern and get more into being in the moment and trusting myself within the moment. And so I'm not going to change this pattern about myself, but awareness around it makes me recognize why I'm uncomfortable or why I make mistakes in things that could be a lot easier, and especially in shifting this pattern of being able to work in the moment. I need to be able to face pain as I see it and be with it and face and turn toward it to fix the problem instantaneously, rather than waiting for a future vision or moving toward the pleasure instead of being with the discomfort or winter, so to speak. So what are you? Moving toward based or moving away from pain based? Let your intuition answer that for you now. And then finally, there's intrinsic or extrinsic. Are you more of an intrinsic or extrinsic focused person? And this one I love. It's such a game changer, because people with a high intrinsic focus really make discernments based on their own feelings and their own perceptions about life and different things. And people with a strong extrinsic view of the world and life are highly sensitive to others' opinions and needs. And you hear the intrinsic pattern in phrases such as like, well, in my view or in my belief system, or, they'll say things like, I don't really care what other people think. Or I know that I'm solid in this right now and it's my decision. And you hear external pattern people focused on things and phrases such as, tell me what you think. What do you think about this? What do you see for me? And they say, I think this will work. I think this will work on the outside, right? Or, they'll talk about people in their life. Well, my husband says that I should. Or they'll be like, I just don't want to hurt anyone as a result. So people who are highly intrinsically focused may be really strong and independent, or they can also be self-critical and incredibly narcissistic. And they may stride out on their own and lack the ability to collaborate with others and receive resources and support, or to be able to actually give things away and ask for help and work as a part of team, which is so important for us as women getting to the next stages of leadership. And the person who's extrinsically focused may be great at listening to others, and yet they're always trying to get people to know their vision, and they're always talking about it, and they want people's feedback and support and permission, and they're more natural coming up with their own, they're kind of they're taking it to the extreme. They want to please everybody and put basically their own real feelings are not even acknowledged because it's always so outward based. And they end up not pleasing anyone because they're not really pleased. They're not really fully taking ownership of what they want and making decisions. And gosh, it can take so much time to work through things. And also it can be so confusing because so many people on the outside have conflicting desires and needs showing up. So in the coaching relationship with ourselves, when we're trying to get better at working with ourselves through things and knowing ourselves, and with our clients, intrinsically focused people make their own assessments of what they should be doing. They're more comfortable coming up with their own answers and suggestions, which may be what they've always done. And however, they might not be really open to exploring new possibilities. And extrinsically focused people are more likely to want to please in some way and get people to come up with suggestions and ideas for them. And like, can you tell me what I should do? So in terms of giving and receiving feedback, each has different needs and styles. And when you know this about yourself, you can better work with yourself to develop better strategies. So intrinsically focused, you need to set your own standards, and you don't often see the need for input from others. And you know yourself, whether you're doing okay or you're not. And extrinsically focused people want reassurance that they're on track. And these things don't have to be negative things. You can work with them really well. But when shifting a pattern, you can also try really nudging yourself into a different way of being. If you're intrinsically focused, you can really focus on receptivity. And this is me. And it's why receptivity has become a cornerstone in my work with my clients, especially with women who are leaders, coaches, CEOs, entrepreneurs. Having that self-trust in your decisions is so powerful. And ultimately, you need to learn how to work with a team. And extrinsically focused people, you can really honor that part of you that works well in a team and takes other people's feedback and has more access to resources. You can grow and expand. But ultimately, you also need to get down to trusting your decisions, being sovereign in yourself and knowing what they are, and not knowing that ultimately the answer is up to you and the feedback is just a resource. And so having one of each type in a relationship whether it's business or personal, can prove challenging. Because if you're on a team and you have an intrinsically focused person and then an extrinsically focused person, or if you're a coach and you're intrinsically focused and you have an extrinsically focused client, you may have a hard time giving them feedback. Or if you're trying to shift and there's this part of you inside of you that you're working with, and those two things are on conflicting levels, you want to understand the natural preferences and learn to adapt toward that behavior. So, are you intrinsically or extrinsically? Are you internal or external? Are you moving backward to number 2, toward pain, toward pleasure, or away from pain? Are you an options or procedures kind of person? So now that you know those things, what we get to do together today on our walk is use the information to unlock an exciting goal together and all the possibilities in your mind to break through like stale situations that are holding you back. And often patterns of behavior have become enriched and no longer are serving you. And that's one of the reasons you're staying stuck. And our dreams, or the thing we most want to feel and embody in our life, become just that, a dream, unless we really translate them into action. And procrastination is really a key driver in people who hire coaches. And resistance is a key driver as well. And I know you all loved the podcast on resistance that we did. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that episode because it will really help you too. But this is getting in deeper, right? Because the first step of getting started on any new thing is to try to break yourself from procrastinating and get yourself into motivation. And you absolutely have to be able to do this for yourself as an entrepreneur. And you absolutely have to be able to do this for yourself if you are a coach, which most of you are either thinking about becoming or already are. So we're going to do 5 quick steps before we close our walk. 1, I want you to pick just one small frustrating area in your life or in your business that you are procrastinating around. Like something that you just keep procrastinating on and about in your life. And you don't need to choose anything massive if you don't want to. Maybe it's just something that you know will take like 45 minutes to do. And it could be something as simple as like setting up the Zoom call for your conference line for your coaching clients. Or it could be something as simple as ordering your holiday decorations in advance, or something as simple as filing the papers for kids back to school. And really just pick that one small thing that you're procrastinating about. And then step 2 is to notice what it's like to feel, just notice what you feel. Notice the distraction, notice the resistance, notice what you come up against, the excuses as you look at this. And just allow yourself to be quiet and feel these feelings for 20 minutes, maybe less. And just consider the situation. You know, what is happening intrinsically with your inner voice? How does it feel in your body? Do you get tightness in your throat or in your gut? What are the images that come to mind, and how does this experience of resistance affect your overall desire to take action? And number 3 is to replace the inner distracted voice with a firm, let's do this now voice. I am taking care of this right now. And number 4 is literally just do the task. Just do it. Stay completely focused on the end result that you want if you are a toward moving person, or stay completely focused on the pain that you need to move away from. And if you want to switch up your pattern and try a different one, go for it. And it might take a little longer the task than you first thought, or surprise you that you got it done way quicker than you imagined. And one thing to notice is that if it really is longer than a few hours, you want to just teach yourself to start to break things down into a series of smaller things to tackle one by one. Again, remember options and procedures. One thing that can hold you back as a procedure person is in these moments, if you're like, I can't do that thing because it's going to take hours. I can't go work on my website or call all the people on my prospecting list to tell them about my new offering, because that's going to take hours and I don't have time for that, so I have to wait until I figure out all the pieces of what I need for that and then do it. Well, you'd be served in becoming a more options-focused person here. Looking at what the different options are and breaking them down into chunks will help you work through the resistance. So play with this thing and these 3 things you know about your patterns now, and see how you can work with them and yourself, or if you want to try this on a client, to more easily shift the way that you're being. This is a massive door opener. And the truth is, when you work on one small thing, it actually relates to bigger things. If you can shift this pattern within small things, you're also going to expand your whole mind to work with a different approach and see things in a new way and accomplish things you couldn't accomplish before. And so the final step, number 5, is to really celebrate what you've just done in this experience, and to really honor what deep work this is, and to know that no successful person is not without having to do this kind of work. Otherwise, they're not creating sustainable results, or they're really struggling behind the scenes of what you think that they're creating success around. They're in a daily struggle with themselves. And I don't want us to be successful women who make great money, but who are burnt the fuck out and hate our lives and live this secret disdain because we're just powering through all the time. These kind of resources support you in a foundation that has you live with grace and ease while achieving incredible things. And they're much more simple than we make them. So what do you need to say to yourself in future moments when you're feeling resistance? And what really great things came from this experience of learning these things about yourself and using them in action? And what images and things came to mind that motivated you and cleared up a path where you were feeling stuck before? And what resources have you got that can accelerate you toward even greater potential now that you know them? So, congratulations. While we may never fully arrive at some perfect, successful moment where life is dreamy and challenges don't exist, you do know how to work through anything. And these smaller things really are an indication of the bigger challenge in our life. The deep-rooted gridlock patterns are just a set of small steps all joined together. Literally small steps like we take every week in our walk here. Literally small steps that we encourage and remind each other to take in our businesses. And this is what I think true success looks like. And this is what it means to be an embodied feminine leader. So, I thought I lost you for a second. Thank you for walking with me today and shedding some light on patterns. I hope that this becomes a resource and a tool for you. And I can't wait to hear about that little pattern that you're shifting. So you can always reach me at Jeannine.Yoder on Instagram. I love to see your pictures while you're walking. I love to hear your updates. It's important to me, making these podcasts are not to just share these tools in the ethers, but it's really to walk through changes with you together. And I am shedding light on this pattern for myself and really looking at this documentary that I've been putting together and making a decision about how I want to launch my signature program, Mentor Masterclass. I've made some big behind-the-scenes changes to how I'm going to run it next year, up-leveled it quite a bit, and I'm really getting clear about who I'm calling in for 2020 to this program. And now is the time where I'm going to make decisions about how I'm going to launch it and open the doors in an exciting way. And I'm looking at and using these patterns to shift the way I've done things in the past and get comfortable with the change. So stay tuned. You'll see coming out in December how I choose to launch and what I choose to launch, and it's going to be different, and these are the tools I'm using. So I hope you'll use these tools yourself toward greater action in something that you've been feeling a lot of resistance or unknown potential around, or just stuckness. And let's chat about it. You can find a link to the blog. If you are signed up on JeannineYoder.com, you're going to get access first to each weekly Wednesday episode. And I share tips, tricks, and resources in those newsletters when I share the new episodes that I don't share anywhere else online. So make sure you're subscribed at JeannineYoder.com. And then on the blog, that's where you can leave comments and we can engage. And I'd love to have this conversation with you and go deeper if you want. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you're there, so your downloads happen automatically. And if you haven't yet, please take some time to leave a review and let me know what you think of the podcast. It helps this podcast to reach other people every time you download an episode and every time you leave a review. So I'd really appreciate your support in that way. Until next week, can't wait to walk with you. Like I said, I'm going to connect these two episodes and we're going to talk about developing better strategies now that you have light and shed light on your patterns. I'll see you then.